Welcome back to the Armchair Coaching Podcast. We have another great guest. I am Coach Sheffer, your host. I'm the offensive line coach at Brentsville District High School in Nokesville, Virginia. And tonight we have Coach Steven Ciocci, who is the offensive line coach, run game coordinator, and recruiting coordinator at Bryant University, which is an FCS Division I school out of Smithfield, Rhode Island. Coach Ciocci, welcome onto the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. So we're just going to jump right in. The first question is one that I ask every single coach that I have on the podcast. I am very fascinated with every coach's individual and unique story because it seems like everyone has a different path. So I'm very interested in hearing your path, as a player and as a coach. Basically, tell me, how did you end up where you are now?
Yeah. So played football not at an early age. Considering what age most people start. Where I was growing up, I was born in North Carolina, was there for a little bit as a kid, moved to Maryland, and then from Maryland to Pennsylvania where I did my high school ball. I was always too big for the weight leagues, so I was constantly playing basketball. I played a little bit of soccer, a little bit of baseball, and then ice hockey, and I thought that was going to be my sport. In sixth grade, YMCA gym, Coach Fran, which might be my OLine coach at middle school Mother Divine Providence in Pennsylvania, he saw me working out. He said, "Son, you play football?" And I was like, "No." I said, "Don't. I like it, enjoy it." But I said, "I'm too heavy." He's like, "Oh, you're at that age now where you can join." And I wound up playing and starting there. Went from there to high school. I played high school. I did my high school ball. I loved it. My uncle was a coach in college as well. Steven Ciocci, he's at the OLine coach at the University of West Florida. We were the D2 national champs last year. Does an unbelievable job. And I went to a game when I was younger, when he was the head coach at Malone University, back when they had football and they were NAI. He was there when they had started that program. And I just remember watching him coach. And I was a kid. I was really young. And seeing these, big, giant O-linemen, listening to him and, him coaching them after the game. He brought me in the locker room, and these big guys were just deferring to him. And I said to myself, I'm hooked. Like I said, I want to do this. So I thought I'd be a high school coach, but my experiences through high school and then college kind of shaped me. So when I got done high school ball, I had been very lightly recruited, was not a heavily recruited guy at all. I thought there was a school I was going to sign with. They wound up pulling my spot late. So I wound up actually walking on Temple University. Was there for a year. I loved it. Matt Rule was the head coach. Was an unbelievable human being, unbelievable coach. He was the assistant coach who recruited me. Al Golden was the head coach. Coach D was the online coach. There was just all these really big-time coaches there at the time. I learned a ton. Kind of going into the summer of my first year, I kind of told my dad at the time, I was like, listen, college is awesome, but I'm not going to pay for 4 years. And so I had kind of been leaning towards making a decision to get out of college, military, stuff like that. And my dad was like, well, just do everything you can to stay in college. And I wound up, kind of on a whim, really late in the process, transferring and just kind of reaching out to schools. And Jason Hoteling was the O-line coach at Wagner College, and at the time, and he called me. I never heard of Wagner. I didn't know where it was. I had visited New York City as a kid, not really a lot since. And he's like, why don't you just come out here one day? It was August 1st. Camp was just starting. He was like, why don't you come out and, see it? Came, I toured. He offered me a scholarship, which is kind of a very awkward time to offer a scholarship, being that late in the process. I took it, and then the rest was history. I was there 4 years as a player, 4-year starter. I loved it. He was an unbelievable line coach, Coach Hamline, the head coach is now the AD there still. Those are the guys that gave me my scholarship. So I loved it. Got to play every position on the O-line, star through 4 years. Towards the end of my time there, my senior year, I knew I wanted to get into coaching. I had wanted to be a high school coach, but one of the things that kind of shaped me in college was every year I would see teammates graduate and not really know what to do in the next step of life. When football was done, it was there was just this void, and that kind of shocked me. I always kind of figured, well, if you don't make the NFL, you just move on. But as I started getting to that clock for myself, I started realizing oh my gosh, think about it. between lifting, practice, all this. And so I kind of felt that the impact I could make was a bigger one by being a college coach and helping young men be prepared for that next step. And we got done our last game. We won the championship my senior year. We played Colgate in the playoffs, beat them at home. And we lost to Eastern Washington out on their red turf in the second round of the FCS playoffs. And I had told Coach Hamline I want to coach. I want to be a GA, start coaching right there at Wagner. He had kind of all fall been telling me, no, you got to go somewhere else. You know, I don't hire former players for their first jobs, all this. And we landed, we lost down to Cheney, Washington, their time. I think it was like the game was over at 11 o'clock, and we didn't land back at Wagner, New York City till about 7 a.m. the next morning. I went right up to him off the plane, and I was like, hey, I'm coming to coach. So he was like, all right, come in the office tomorrow, Monday. We'll get you started, get your GA contract. And that's how I got into college coaching. GA'd for 2 years there. First year as the assistant OLine coach. My second year, I got promoted to tackles and tight ends. Unbelievable experience. I got to work with, again, great coaches that are all throughout college football right now. Coach Wheeler, who's the OLine coach at URI. Coach Steven King, who's at UNC Quality Control. Justin Hines, who's D-line coach at Central Michigan. My good friend Sam McGrath, who's quality control down at Duke, and Keith Davis, who's at base. It was this awesome, young group of coaches that has really expanded out all over. And we won championship year 2. My GA time was up. I left. I got hired at a D2 school in New York, Pace University. Andrew Rondo was the head football coach there. Unbelievable opportunity. I had just gone from a championship program to a program that had, I think, won his first year there. They won a game. It was like the first game they had won in 4 or 5 years. There was 4 O-linemen on the roster that spring when I took the job. We actually had to move a tight end to O-line. That was the best experience ever because that taught me all about recruiting. Coach Rondo was the most disciplined guy I've ever worked for in terms of the standard of recruiting and what you had to know about a young man, his family, the process, all that. So he taught me a ton. Was there for 1 year. Going into year 2 in July, I got a call from my former O-line coach, Coach Haas, Coach Hotel, who had gotten promoted to the head coach at Wagner. And this was July 15, something like that. And he was like, hey, I want you to come back and coach at Wagner. And I was like, oh, heck yeah, great. I'm like, what position? And he's like, defensive line special teams coordinator. And I was like, I said, okay. I said, yeah. I said, I'm interested. I said, I've never coached D-line. I've certainly never coordinated special teams. He's like, oh yeah, on top of that, you're going to come be the recruiting coordinator too. So he's like, I'm going to give you 20 minutes to accept it, or I'm going to move on to the next guy. And I was like, yeah, I'll take it. So 2 weeks before camp, I get there and I'm pouring over all these old special teams manuals and, D-line film. And it was awesome. I loved it. Did that for 2 years. It was great working with him. Got to be a coordinator, special teams. Got to coach D-line, which has made me a better O-line coach and taught me a lot more coach on that side of the ball. And then the special teams part, the coolest thing about that, I tell everyone, obviously your knowledge of the game expands, but your interactions with kids on the team is just so much cooler. Because I never really cared when I was coaching on the O-line about – I cared about the men in the DB room, the young men. I'd ask them how them the families were doing, but I never had to coach those kids. So, it was like passing conversations. Now you have to coach a receiver, a DB, running back, tight end. You got to coach everything. So that was awesome. And then recruiting coordinator was great. Did that for 2 years. And then I wanted to get back to the O-line. I knew that my GA clock, so you have 7 years to be a GA when you're done playing or you graduate. So I knew I was approaching the end of that. So I started to send in my resume to, Division 1A schools all across the country, looking for an O-line GA. Got a lot of responses back, but the responses I kept getting back were kind of like, why are you trying to go from an FCS coordinator to a GA? You're in the position that most guys are leaving to go take. And I was trying to explain it, and I wound up calling one of my mentors, Alan Mogridge, the O-line coach now at University of South Florida. He was at FIU at the time. And I said, listen, I can't get anyone to, to really take me seriously with this. I said, what do you think I should do? And he was like, He's like, well, if you're crazy and dumb enough, why don't you come work for me? And I was like, heck yeah. So he had a job open. So I wound up leaving Wagner in 2018, going down to FIU. Was the assistant offensive line coach there, offensive line GA, coached mainly the centers and the guards. That was the most eye-opening experience in the world for me because, you go from being a young coach with a huge role, coordinating role, recruiting role, full-time, all that, to Butch Davis was my head football coach. So the amount of knowledge that man had. Rich Skrosky is one of the best offense coordinators in the country. This is a guy that had top 25 offense in Division I football for multiple years. Was the coordinator. Tim Harris, run backs coach, unbelievable coach. Coach Aubrey Hill, the receivers coach, who had been at multiple programs. Rest in peace to him. He passed away earlier this summer. And then obviously Alan Mogridge, just getting to work with the guy that had coached at like 5-6 different 1A programs. And it was awesome. I learned everything, slept in the office a lot, grinded, but learned more football in that 1 year than I ever would have thought possible. And then did a year there, finished with the bowl win, school record for wins. We had unbelievable success. And, my time was ending clockwise, and Bryant University wound up hiring Coach Merritt, our head coach, Christopher Merritt. Him and I know each other since 2013. And, right before our bowl game, he had kind of called me. We're getting ready to head to the Bahamas Bowl. And he calls me and says, hey, I'm interviewing for this job. Would you be interested in coming up with me and the OLine coach? I was kind of shocked. I know he was up for it. I said, yeah. So, hit me up if it actually comes through. We're in the Bahamas, and he gets the job. He was coming down. He actually had an event down there, so he flew down to Bahamas. Him and I met. We got back, talked more over the break. Offered me the OLine job, run game coordinating job, and then the recruiting coordinator as well. And the rest is history. I took it, and it's been awesome. It's a little different for me because it was one of my rival schools. Like Wagner's in the same conference, so it was a little awkward, going back. But that's kind of my story about how I got into it. And my biggest influence, definitely, my uncle shaped me at a young age that I knew I wanted to coach.
Wow, Coach, that's pretty awesome. Most of the listeners for this podcast are high school coaches. We get a couple like D3 and other college coaches, and some regular football fans on here. But could you take a moment? I know you really haven't coached high school, so maybe this might be a little difficult to answer, but could you describe to us what like the daily life of a D1 FCS college coach is like? Specifically, like what's it like at Bryant? And you can go ahead and talk about your time at FIU if you want as well.
Yeah. So like at Bryant, it's definitely like, off season and in season, I'm assuming, Coach. Yeah. So like in season, so you play a game Saturday, that's done. Sunday morning you're in there, depending on the staff you work for, like at Bryant, you're like 8 a.m. You're in there, you're grading your film by position, you're making sure everything's done. Then the coordinators will have a meeting, so usually you have about 2 hours on Sunday. Like you better have that stuff done, which means Saturday night after the game, you're getting it done. Like 10 a.m., we'll be in staff side of ball meetings, coordinators. And then about 12 o'clock, we'll all come together with the head coach. And then, that'll take you to the team lift, team practice, team meetings later in the day. In season, Monday, Sunday night after we're done with the kids. So really from Sunday at 4 p.m. to about, we practice in the afternoons, Tuesday at 11 a.m. You're not really sleeping. That's game plan time. So it's, every coach is assigned something different. So like for me, I take all the run game stuff, formations, motions, personnel, all the breakdowns that we do. The younger coaches are breaking down the film, they're tagging it. The older coaches, and coordinators, we're watching what they've tagged, and then we're making our cut-ups for the week, and then we're starting to go through and do our padding and, put all of our formations, our pictures versus every front, everything they're doing during that time. Very similar to what, obviously you guys do in high school. It's the exact same basically, except, we don't have to be in school. We're just doing this constantly. So there's no other jobs, there's no teaching or anything like that. And so that'll last till Tuesday install meetings in the afternoon. And then from there, we'll meet usually around from like 2 to 3, and then we'll practice from about 3 to 5. And then that practice will be done. Then we'll go back into meetings. We'll watch that day's film, break it down. Then we'll finish our cut-ups. So like then we might enter our third down cut-ups, stuff like that. And that kind of gets repeated, Tuesday morning or Wednesday morning, back in the office early, meet with the players in the morning, back to side of ball, special teams meetings, everything like that, all the way up to practice. Meetings, practice, and that kind of repeats. Thursday is kind of where you break the mold. You're usually done a little earlier. Again, with us being afternoons, you're not. So like Thursday for us, the game plan is pretty much set. So we'll do film review in the morning, and then the rest of the day, a lot of it Thursday will be recruiting. We'll be going over who's coming to visit that weekend in a normal year, not a pandemic year where no one's allowed. But we'll be going over who's coming. We'll be talking about our top prospects, what games they're playing in, where they're at on our recruiting boards. We'll be talking about positional needs based off of injury, graduation, just stuff that happens every week because every week changes. Thursday practice, and then Thursday night's like a big get on the phone call night. That's like we're calling all the recruits, wishing them good luck, staff writing, letters for following week kids, stuff like that. And then Friday, if it's a home game, it's more of a relaxed day. Usually, again, in the morning, we'll have a recruiting meeting. We'll finalize that weekend's recruiting strategy. We'll also watch all the film of top guys that we're either looking to continue to offer or top guys that we have offered to see how they're doing. We'll have meetings, big special teams emphasis on Friday with our guys, walk through, and then we'll have walk through a night, team meal, team dinner, let them loose. And if it's travel day, Friday morning, you're getting up to either go on a bus somewhere or get on a plane. And then Saturday's game day. So like a Saturday game day for us is, the strength coach handles a lot of the warm-ups and stuff like that. We're doing a ton of recruiting stuff in the morning. So if the game's at 12, we're in there by 6:30 because recruits are getting there by 7:30 and everything needs to be set up. So 7:30 to 10 is really recruit time. The team will have breakfast. The head coach will be at that. A couple assistant coaches might be at that. The rest of us are dealing with recruits. And then 10 to 12 is kind of where we'll drop the recruits off to go to breakfast. They go do stuff. And then we now get into game mode. And then post-game, it just gets into that whole phase. And then the off season is big, kind of keep it abbreviated. Our guys will lift 4 days a week. As a staff, even though we're not strength staff, we'll go to predominantly to all the workouts. So, we'll be there generally at, 5, 6 a.m., depending on the workout time. So from, I'd say 5 to 9, 10 a.m., that's our kids' development time, whether it's conditioning, lifting, all that. From 10, 11 to usually about 1 is going to be side of ball install, off-season development. That could be professional development. It could be us looking at our own stuff, preparing for spring ball. It could be us watching other guys that cut-ups who we've wanted to study from the previous season or just in general. And then once you get around 2, 3 o'clock, we'll do a staff meeting. And then from there on, it's recruiting till about 5 every day. So we're watching prospects side of balls. So early in the spring, in winter, it'll be you'll watch your whole position list, every prospect from everyone's area in your positions. By about end of February, it's going to turn into once sign day's over, we're watching side of ball. So coordinators are now watching it. And then early March, before the kids go on spring break, we're watching our top guys. Now we have our board, not finalized, but into that. So there's whether it's in season or out of season, there's the development of our guys, whether it's practice or lift. Then there's our own side of ball staff study, whether it's in season opponent, off season ourselves, or off season other people. And then recruiting is 24/7. Your phone is constantly, you're constantly on it. DMing and texting and all that. So that's probably the biggest thing.
That's a lot, Coach.
Yeah.
And you mentioned doing the padding and talking about formations versus different fronts and stuff, and we do all that too. Yeah.
Yep,
and
100%.
but it's not uncommon because I'm a teacher too. It's not uncommon
Sure.
for me, like when the kids are off doing their assignments, I'm sitting there over there, okay, watching film on Huddle, doing
Yeah.
all this stuff, and the kid comes over, what are you doing? Oh, nothing. What do you want?
Yeah, 100%.
Stuff like that. So you mentioned recruiting a lot, which I understand because you're the recruiting coordinator. Can you kind of describe a little more detail on the
Sure.
recruiting side, like your daily schedule? You can do in season, out of season,
Yep.
um, and like the specific duties that you face as the recruiting coordinator.
Yeah. So, the biggest thing, like every coach on staff in college is within themselves as a recruiting coordinator. Like you have to have your area, so your state, your area, state, geographic, all that, and you have to own that, and you have to live through that. So like our guys here do an unbelievable job, and I'm very lucky, very fortunate, the staff we have. As a recruiting coordinator, the biggest thing is generally coaches convention time. That's when you have staff changes, guys take new jobs, guys get added, all that. When that kind of settles down, and when especially after that signing period's over, that second signing period in February, I really start with, okay, here's our staff, and I organize everyone by geographical area. So I assign the recruiting areas to you guys via my head coach. Obviously he approves everything, and him and I sit down with it. And you really want to be very specific in how you do that. So if you have a coach that is not from the South, and you're like, okay, you now have the South. Well, do they have connections down there? Do they know the high school coaches? Do they know, how football is down there, about spring ball, different stuff like that. You kind of send that guy up for failure. So the first thing I try to do is I kind of sit down with everyone. I get to know where their history is, where they're from. With FCS school, with budget restraints on, bigger schools like FIU, bigger budget, Bryant, very well funded, but still you want to save your dollars, stretch your dollars. I'll assign guys areas where I know they have places to stay. So friends, family, where you're from, because there's just that local connection. So the first thing we do is early in the off season, late January, February, I'll get everyone their area. And we'll use certain recruiting services, but it really comes down to the end of the day, all those are is they give us the data and we look through it. But you own your area. So every coach, you're going to get on that huddle of every high school. And it's going to take time. And that's one thing I tell guys, we're not going to be in a rush to offer guys quick. You want to go through every high school. You want to reach out to as many of the coaches as you can, preferably phone over email. And you're going to gather, and everyone's going to gather that information in their area. And so I just kind of oversee that. I make sure to help, younger coaches, learn how to do it. And then we will present that. And what we use a system called ARMS recruiting software. And I kind of keep that clean, the database. I make sure that everything's updated on that. If there's stuff that we don't use on that we want to put on Google Drive, Excel sheets, so I'm organizing our recruiting boards. I'm making sure that the position coach and the coordinators are on the same page. So, if perfect example would be if a position coach loves a kid, but a recruiting coordinator or a side ball coordinator doesn't, I'll kind of be the intermediary. Okay, should this go to the head coach for him to decide is this worth it? So, but that's the biggest thing, first of all, is the organization. And then on-campus visits, unofficial and official, I organize those through compliance. So, kids coming to visit, I'm making sure that the proper forms are filled out, that we are letting compliance know that we are making sure that there's no issues with that, dead periods, quiet periods, all that. So unofficials, those are easier, whether it's off season, coming to see the campus, in season, but I'll organize that, make sure the staff knows who's coming and when they're coming. Official visits, I'll do a lot more of the work with that, with our compliance. I'll make sure the core calculators are accurate. I'll make sure all the transcripts, the financial reads, the early reads, academically, all that's done. So really what you're doing as a recruiting coordinator is, you've got your own recruiting areas. You're making sure everyone else's recruiting areas are clean, that they're efficient, that they're based on previous experience, that they're based on knowledge, that they're based on, just comfortability. And then you're taking all that data and you're making sure that you're getting the right type of kid at the school you're at. So like for us, we're a high academic school. So like there's a lot of kids we love film wise. And guys won't be like, oh, I want to offer this kid. But okay, does he check off the box of, is he going to get in academically and is he a fit? Like you might get into the school, but is he going to struggle for 4 years here because you're going to be in constant class and, data labs and stuff like that. So off season is really about the data collection. It's about organizing it. When we get done spring ball, I organize the recruiting calendar with our head coach. So you assign who's going to go on the road, what dates, what areas. We're allowed X amount of days to be on the road. And so for each day a coach is on the road, so if there's 10 coaches on the road one day, that's 10 days off your calendar. So, you got to be very, you got to constantly update that. I'll organize our one-day camps, make sure that we have the facilities booked with our DFO, make sure that, we're getting the right prospects to come to our camp. And we'll also organize what camps we're going to go to, bigger schools and other schools. And then in season, it really turns into home game visits, making sure the high school coaches, are able to come, that we're getting the proper recruits and who we want to be on campus. And then the real work is after the season's over. Once the season's over, everyone kind of takes a deep breath. It actually, for a recruiting coordinator, it's actually the worst time of the year, most stressful. Official visits, signing day, all that, compliance, all that. So,
Wow.
I hope that answered that. I don't know if that did.
Oh yeah, definitely, Coach. That's, whew.
Yeah.
No wonder it's a that's like 3 full-time jobs in one.
Yeah.
And
it's why I think at bigger schools now you're seeing that be a more like off the field coaching role. Like you're seeing people have like with bigger budgets have that position. But it's awesome. I love it. You get to talk to more high school coaches than anybody as a recruiting coordinator. And you really are making sure that your program, what you're putting out there is accurate because it's on you. So I love it.
Yeah. Now, I've been doing kind of a deep dive over the offseason into culture and leadership. Could you describe your own personal leadership style as a coach?
Sure. I'm a big believer. I keep this very simple. Like when my guys go out to practice, if for whatever reason I couldn't be there, and like I tell them now, like now more than ever, this is a perfect example. Like with COVID, like if I were to not be able to be there, am I developing a room where you guys are strong enough leaders that you could run it yourself? And so like, a big thing that we talk about is, we want to build young men to be player led. I believe as a coach, we got to lead them to that. So I'm a very demanding coach. Big thing for me when I recruit guys, I want guys to come to camp. I want to go to camp because I want to coach young men so they see how I'm going to coach them. I'm going to lead from the front. So if we give up 5 sacks, it's not my O-line's fault. It's my fault. And that's a big thing to me. Like, when people talk about that, like, oh, well, the O-line played bad. No, I did a bad job as the coach because that's on me. So I tell my players that all the time. I'll be the first in line to take any heat with anything. And I think that builds unbelievable trust in your room when you do that. So I'm going to lead from the front, but I'm going to develop these guys to grow and lead themselves. And that's kind of my style and how I do it, So like our pre-practice here at Bryant, I love it with these guys. I'm lucky. I coach unbelievable young men. They run it themselves. I go around and correct it, but I've got 4 seniors that different one will take each day. And like the other day, I got really excited. 2 days ago, one of my sophomores did it. He's out there. He's like, all right, guys, here we go. Let's get in the grid and start doing our scoot steps. And I watch, and I'll go and correct the freshmen. But I let those guys run that, and I love it. And it takes time in the off season developing and all that, but that's kind of the culture that we want to have. I'll always have.
That's awesome, Coach. We all know that there are certain position groups out there, aka the wide receivers or the DBs, who have pretty big personalities on the football team. How are some ways that you, as the offensive line coach, allow your offensive linemen to develop their own unique personality within that team structure?
Sure. I love that question. And, I think any good O-line, like the football team is the family. And I think, like, if you look at – you got to be very careful. I know we all do this. Like, we'll go day one of practice, right? And, we're going to keep it playing. Not a lot of motion, straight shifts, and defense runs like a 7-man pressure day one. And so what does it turn into? It's like, okay, you know what? Screw the defense. Like, we're going to go after them. And you don't want that. So we're one family, one team, all that. I do believe that the O-line unit within itself is a family of its own. You don't want that mentality to be bigger than the team ever. But, like, we ask those guys more than any other position. I'll stand by that. I'm sure I'll piss off some friends of mine that coach other positions, but that's okay. I want them to have their own personality. So, like, what they are and then what I want them to be, to me, are together, but they don't have to be the same. So, like, we live by the motto 5 strong. You're only as strong as the man next to you. So, like, the 5 of us as one are stronger together than separate. So, like, everything we do is going to be built in that. And then within themselves, I want them to have their own identity. So, like, for my guys, they're the big dogs. Like, that's kind of their thing. They're like, like, we're gonna eat together, we're gonna hang out together, we're gonna lift together. If there's an issue with one of us, it's an issue with all of us. And then I encourage them to, like, build their own unique relationships and everything like that. So, like, I have a very unique room, and each one of them has their own kind of quirks and personalities, and I let them grow with that. And I tell them that as long as it fits the motto, again, that we're all together, no matter how different we are, 5 strong as 5 of us are stronger together. I'm good with it. So I think a lot of that is developed with doing stuff in the off season, fun stuff, whether it's paintballing, meals, all that. Like, we went surfing a month ago as a whole line. It's the funniest thing in the world. Surfing during the pandemic, we all had masks on. These, like, big 300-pound bodies are walking on the beach Labor Day weekend up in Narragansett, pale as hell because they don't get a lot of sun. Just, like, little cool things like that.
So you have a little bit more insight into this than some of the other coaches I've asked this, because you're the recruiting coordinator. What type of kid are you looking at to recruit for O-line? And then let's say you have 2 guys that you're looking at. What's going to separate that one kid that you offer from the kid that you don't?
100%. So, with us, kind of going back again, like, it's easy for us at Bryant because of the academics right away. Like, I've coached at schools where, academics aren't an issue. Like, if the kid's eligible D1, you're recruiting them. There's nothing wrong with that either. That's giving a lot of young men opportunities. Here, there's a set GPA and all that. So that right away eliminates a lot of guys. The biggest thing for me, regardless of any school I coach at, I want my old linemen to be smart guys. So, like, the GPA to me is a big thing. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a 4.0 student at all. Like, I've recruited guys that have had lower GPAs at different schools because they might have had a different, rougher life than other people. And, like, you knew they were smart. You knew they were pushing through it. And I like that type of kid. But the big thing for me is I'm going to look at their intelligence. I am going to, I am going to watch the film. And if the film checks off and I'm looking for bend in the knee. So we talk about 3 levels of bend: knees, ankles, hips. If there's good bend in all 3, that's a kid that automatically, gets moved up to the top. Then I'm going to look at the different attributes. I know the big, like, topic all the time is, like, height and length. To me, it's more about arm length than height. I've coached tackles at the Division I level that are 6'1". They have unbelievable arm length and are athletic, and they're just as effective as a guy that's 6'7". Same with, I've coached center. My center here last year, Bryant, he's going to get angry at me for saying this, Andrew Jones, but you were 5'10", and he's listed at 6'1" on the roster. And the kid was all conference kid and a 4-year starter. So I look at the physical attributes when I watch the film for the first time. I look to check the academics. And if those 2 cross off, okay, now I look at the big picture. I get the kid on the phone. I talk to him. I get to kind of know how football smart he is. I get to see what our interest he is. I'll look to see if he plays multi-sports. That's a big thing for me. I like multi-sport linemen. How tough is he? The big thing to me is I don't watch just highlights. Like, a highlight will pique my interest, then the grades will make you and me say, okay, this kid's worth, and then I'll pull up game film. Like, how are you playing between the whistles? Like, it's easy to make a 10-minute highlight. And what do you look like between the whistles? And then the big thing for me, too, is I have a certain set of hip explosion and flexibility exercises that I make every lineman do that we offer. So I'll send a video of me doing it, and I'll say, I need you to see you do this. And it's very simple stuff, takes 2 minutes. But when it comes down to, like, when I decide between two guys, truthfully, in a perfect world, I'm going to come down to, if I have a live evaluation of one of them and not the other, I'm going to take the live guy, because not only have I seen him in person, but I've also coached him, which means he's seen my style. He's heard me coach. So if he's interested in playing for me, he knows what type of coach he's going to get. That's the biggest thing to me. And then personality is big. You know, like, I don't like guys that are timid and quiet. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. And I don't like guys that are arrogant either, but I like guys that are confident and play the game confident. I think you see that better live than you obviously can on film. So, like, I guess, like, to answer your question, Coach, like, it's less important to me, like, okay, two guys both have a scholarship, I can only take one. Well, one's 6'4", the other's 6'2". Like, if I'm recruiting them for a certain position and they're both in that position slot, I'm going to take the kid that has the mentality, the better mentality of what I'm looking for, rather than just the height. You know, like last year, like, we signed 5 guys, and, like, one guy was 6 foot, 6'1", tallest guy was 6'7". So, like, the range to me doesn't matter as much as the fit and what we're doing, you know, schematically, and the fit mentally, what they are. Does that answer that?
Oh yeah, Coach. It makes perfect sense. And I'm not sure if you saw the picture or watched the game of Coastal
Yeah, I
Carolina
did.
and their offensive line, and you know,
I love what they do. Yeah,
some of the shorter guys out there are the more nasty guys. The ones that
100%.
they have that mentality. They just might not be 6'5", 320,
Sure.
you know. And those guys, if you recruit them, they're going to play hard,
100%.
because they're not getting recruited by those bigger programs, and they're going to play hard. And just watching Coastal, those guys play hard.
They
Now,
play
I
unbelievable.
I can't call them small because I'm 5'9".
Right.
So, you know, to me, they're bigger than me. And I played O-line, D-line in high school, and I definitely
Right.
did not get recruited.
Right.
If I had ever been recruited, I would have played hard as an
Right.
offensive lineman. But that we're going to move on from that.
Right.
What are some of your favorite O-line drills, and do you have any, like, everyday drills that you use?
Yeah. I like to keep it simple. So, like, my biggest thing is every day we're gonna start every practice the exact same. So my guys will get out about 10, 15 minutes early to practice. And we will line up we'll call it a grid, so like the square boxes. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bend, we're going to get in a stance, and we're literally just going to work all of our footwork we're going to do that day. Zone, pass pro, and we call it the grid. So we're going to zone to the left. Okay, backside now. So left stance, zone to the left, front side. Now I'm still in that left stance. I'm in the backside zone. First a man on me, so I'm going to drop my feet and scoot to him. Okay, now I got a man all the way inside. I got to get there. So I'm going to skip and pull and get there in the backside zone. We're going to do that every single day. We're going to do line drills. So we're going to work our lateral set. We're going to work our short set. We're going to work our vertical set on this grid. And from there, we're going to do our tear torque. We're working just independent hand strike, finishing on throwing guys by, our hip roll. And then we'll work our agility. So it's just change of direction, bending, and we finish with 3 anchors versus bull rush. So that's like an everyday thing that we'll do in pre-practice. And then in actual practice, every day, we are going to work our trigger lead steps on our deuce blocks. So like the covered man guard on a 3 tech versus 3 technique, and our gallops from our tackles, you know, our 45-degree gallops in the line of scrimmage. So we're going to work our most common combo every day, which is going to be our gap combo. We're going to work our zone run fits. So we're going to scoot, fit, rock back. So that's our rock back technique. We're play side is empty, backside I'm covered, my backside shoulder. So I'm going to scoot, rock back, and give help to him. And we're going to work our skips off of that. So basically every day I tell my guys, you're going to be bored beyond belief, but we're going to do the exact same drills. And then specific game plan wise, when we have different plays in, we will work stuff specific to that. And then in pass pro, we're going to work redirection, independent hands, change of direction, twist pickup every day. So, total, I tell guys, sounds like a lot. We really do 8 drills over and over and over, thousands of reps. And like on our video database of our drill cut-ups, it's the same drills over and over and over and over and over. So, and our pull techniques, we'll work that every day, our sickle and then our open pull.
That's cool, Coach. Hey, I'm the same way. I use the same drills over and over, get lots of reps, and the more reps you get, the more automatic those
100%.
movements become. It becomes muscle memory, and on the game you can just see it. Without giving away too much, because I know you probably.
I'm an open book. I don't care, Coach. You're good, so don't worry.
What are your personal views on like offensive and defensive schemes? Like, hypothetically speaking, you were hired as the OC tomorrow. What are you running, and why are you running it?
Yeah, definitely. I think run game you got to live in. I would have 4 to 5 run schemes, and then pass. Being an OLine guy, my pass game is all going to be quick game and screens, so my OLine doesn't have to give up sacks. I'm just joking. I would be more quick game based and play action than a lot of true drop back. I think you got to kind of know your fit, and drop back is great. I think everyone loves it and you need it. But I think the longer you hold on the ball, more bad things happen. And I think in really drop back, if you got great receivers, I'm gonna be in drop back all the time. So like pass game wise, it'd be definitely be quick game. I like our quick game, what we're doing here now. I think play action is huge. You have to do it. Screens are a little tougher to me. I'm more of a fan now of the quick screens out on the perimeter than I am of the true tailback. And the issue I have with screens now that you're no longer allowed to cut in space as old linemen, I think it's a lot tougher to be as good as we used to be. It used to be run in space and throw, and that DB was just going to get the heck out of the way regardless. Now, the mentality still really hasn't changed. I tell guys you just got to run through it instead of cut because he's going to get out of the way. Run game to me, I would definitely be inside zone. I would be big pin and pull. I love re-gapping things. So pin and pull is huge to me. We do a good job of it here. I think outside zone's a little tougher, just in terms of like we're always saying we're going to stretch and hit outside. I think that's tough. I think pin and pull, you get bodies out there while sealing the box. So I think it's an easier way to run that. I think whether you run power or counter is totally based on your tight end strength. Like if you've got really good tight ends, I'd run a lot more power because they can win those one-on-one blocks with minimal guard help. If your O-line's bearing your tight ends and you don't think you win it, I would run a lot more counter. Your guard's going to block a big body. Your tight end's going to insert on a linebacker, which is a similar body. I think you got to have RPOs tagged all that to keep that's seventh defender out of the box, whether it's a safety, boundary safety, if you're a lot of boundary run team, or if it's a field Sam, So, and then I'm a big believer in guard tackle counter too. That's another big thing for us. GT counter. That you can do so much with that. You can do your read scheme with the arc tight end. You can just seal on the backside. And again, all these you can do so much play action off of. Not a huge fan of gap protections. I can honestly say that. I think whenever and I believe in them because they're great play action, but I think like if you watch a gap protection cut up, there's a lot of pressures. So I think you got to have quick game, play action. That can't be a drop back or a long developing scheme. So I think you got to keep it simple. Master run and pass about 5 core quick game concepts, 5 core drop back. Usually really about 2 screens is all I think you really need. Like 2 to 3 play actions. Take your top 3 run plays and do your play actions off of that, and have 4 to 5 run plays.
That's awesome, Coach. Yeah, we're a spread team and we run inside zone. We don't run inside zone as much as we run outside zone. We're more of we call it stretch. It's more of a wide zone. We're actually running it because we want that cutback. That's
Sure.
what we're trying to
100%.
do. It's more of an off tackle play.
Yep.
That was one of our best halfback run plays that we had this past year, and we're going to run it a lot this year too, because we got a couple of good running backs. But our quarterback is a threat in the run game,
That's
and
awesome.
so we're pretty much thinking, hey, we're going to have to add play action off of this that we
Sure.
didn't run much last year, because teams are going to try to stack the box,
Sure.
and they're going to see him take one step forward, and they're all just going to come up. So
Right.
play action it's dirty when you do it right. So
Oh, yeah.
I'm definitely in agreement with you there, Coach. I don't like drop back passing at all. Not one bit. So I've never coached college before. All my experience has been high school. When I was in college, my freshman year, I was a red shirt because D3 is a little bit different. And I helped out with film coordinating and a lot of like what GAs do, at least what I understand GAs at D1, what they
Yep.
do. And it's always been a dream of mine since I got into coaching to eventually become a college coach. What would be some tips that you would have for someone like me who's a high school coach currently, but would like to become a college coach?
Sure. Obviously everyone's going to tell you, like, networking is big. You want to get to know as many people as possible. The biggest things I would say is there's a couple of challenges now that I'll say it's on record. I think the NCAA is beyond foolish. Like, they make it so much harder now for a high school coach. They have that rule where if you get hired and there's like a recruited player from that school, like it's like 2 years, or if you hire a coach, they can't. I think it's like if you hire a high school coach, you can't recruit there for a couple of years. Some ridiculous rule they made a few years ago. And then they don't allow you guys to work camps anymore. Like our one-day camps, I would have all local high school coaches come to it. Like that's how I would want to do it. I think the biggest thing is spring ball and the off season, getting actually to a college campus and developing connection. Like I look at, and a great resource for this I know is Tim Harris, our running backs coach at FIU. Tim was a high school coach down in Miami for a long time at Booker T. Washington. He had developed a lot of relationships in recruiting and all this. And then when FIU wound up hiring him as the running backs coach before I got there, that was a big thing. I think you got to get to know guys. You got to get around them on campus. And spring ball to me is just the biggest, because that's like the time of year where I think where college coaches are more eager to get people. Like fall camp, it's like it's the season. It's like you guys are in season, we're in season. Spring ball to me is where I've made the most connections with high school coaches. Like, hey, can I come down there and watch practice and sit on meetings? Yeah, come down for the week. Like, honestly, come down, I'll take you out to dinner, all that. And I think that is the biggest thing. With the one-day camps, I think whether or not you have a guy for a school, I think the best thing is, like, again, every college in America is going to tell you bring recruits to their camp. I tell guys, bring recruits to the big camps where all of us are going to be at. And I probably shouldn't say that on record because that's less kids to our camp, but that's okay. I'm good with that. But like, there's going to be a ton of coaches there. Like, get to know those guys, introduce yourself, talk to them. Clinics are good. They're really good. You're going to learn which college coaches actually get care and want to give time to talk to guys. I like clinics in the off season where it's Glacier, stuff like that. I do a bunch because, like after the clinic's done and, everyone's at the bar or the restaurant, it's like, introduce yourself, get to know and just talk. I've made a ton of connections with guys doing it that way. Another great resource like Dom Gaston is one of my best friends. He's the receivers coach at LIU Post and the recruiting coordinator there. Dom was a high school coach at Pope John Paul for, I want to say, like 4 or 5 years in Jersey before making the jump to college at Bates College. And then from Bates came to us. And the biggest thing is don't be afraid to coach lower level ball. Like, the truth is, like, it's easier to get a lower level, like D3, NAIA, D2 than probably D1 right away. And there's that's you're actually going to be a better coach doing that. Like, high school coaches and lower level coaches are better coaches, in my opinion, who have done it from the beginning, because you're coaching an athlete that's not as great. If that makes sense. Like when I went from Wagner, and Wagner's UFCS, so it's not like we have great athletes. When I went from Wagner to Pace, I found out I wasn't really a good coach. Like I had really good players at Wagner, and I had to coach kids that were awesome players, awesome young men, but weren't great athletes at all. And you actually have to really coach and develop. And so, like to me, that's what helped me become a better coach, was coaching that level and moving back up. And so that would be a big thing to me, is as many spring practices, stuff like that. Be more than a follow on Twitter. So like, and I don't mean to say it's like there's so many DMs that like I feel like a bad person. I won't lie. I miss DMs from coaches too much. I'll try to get back to all of them and all that. Get to the spot where you get a relationship with a guy where like, hey, here's my cell. Because then I'll get back. Like then I'm good. Like you're locked in. Like talk whenever, all that. That would be the biggest thing. And then if you're a really young coach, know what your GA clock is. So 7 years after you get done playing, if you're past that, there's nothing wrong with that. Just know that, like, again, bigger schools are probably going to fill guys. Like, 1A schools are probably going to fill guys that they've worked with or friends of the profession. Lower schools are going to, D2, D3, 1AA. They're more likely to hire guys from high school up.
Awesome. Now, the last question I have for you is kind of like a personal one for you. Why? It's very simple. Why Bryant? Right? Why Bryant? Why is it the right fit for you right now?
Yeah. So that's a good question. The coolest thing about Bryant to me is I've worked at a lot of awesome schools that prepared young men for life. They've taken kids from rough situations, scholarships, gave them football experience, gave them a great academic experience and all this. Bryant is the first school I've been at where I've coached this type of kid, like the high academic kid. I tell people all the time, I'm not a super smart guy. I'll never pretend to be. I'm kind of like a country guy. I prefer to be outdoors, versus technology, all this stuff. And so learning how to coach that type of kid was like a challenge for me that I said, I wanted to take at some point. I wanted to see what it was like to coach a kid that's really smart, that off the field, it comes easy to him. On the field, probably not as easy. It was a school that I had played against and coached against. I had a ton of respect for them, even though I hated them when I played and coached against them. The commitment to football here for an FCS school is extraordinary. Like our facilities, in my opinion, are second to none. Our academic resources for our student athletes are second to none. We graduate all of our student athletes. They all get full-time jobs. And that's not just football, it's all the sports. It's just a testament to all the sports at Bryant. It is an institution that cares about young men and women more than just on the field, but for what they're going to take the next step in life. And they actively, from the day you get here, are preparing you and helping take you and push you into that part of life. So that was a huge thing to me. I felt like it was a school where, like, not only am I football coach trying to help guys in life, I'm actually at a school where the young men there's other resources other than myself and other coaches to do that for them. So that was big to me, that whole academic component of it.
All right, Coach, this has been an awesome interview. I really appreciate you coming on tonight.
No, I appreciate it. This was awesome. Thank you for everything you do, man. I love what you're doing with this podcast. I enjoy it.
Well, thank you. That makes me feel good. We recently just hit I know this is small potatoes for a lot of other podcasters out there, but we recently just hit the 1,000 downloads mark. And
That's
to
awesome.
me, the first podcast I did, I told the guys, I said, look, I don't have any delusion of grandeur with this. I'd be happy if 5 people listen to this.
Sure, yeah.
And now we're at 1,000 and it's growing. And I've got a wait list of podcast episodes that haven't been edited yet that are still need to be released, of some really great podcasts, including this one. Man,
Sure.
And I'd love to have you back on sometime
Heck
soon.
yeah.
Maybe we can talk more like offensive line specific stuff.
Absolutely.
And that'd be great. So one more time, thank you for coming on, Coach. And this has been Coach Sheffer, and we are signing off.